At my daughter Chloe's high school graduation party, she stood up to give a speech. In front of all our friends and family, gathered in the backyard of the house I owned, she thanked her stepdad, Rick, for her brand new, fire-engine red convertible. Then she turned, looked directly at me, and with a voice dripping with manufactured pity, she announced, "My stepdad gave me a car, but my real dad never did." A wave of uncomfortable silence washed over the crowd. I just smiled, a thin, placid smile that didn't reach my eyes, raised the glass of champagne I was holding, and gave a slight nod. I said nothing. The next morning, I called my realtor and listed the house I had been letting her and her mother live in, rent-free, for the past 5 years. I liquidated the 6-figure college fund I had meticulously built for her since the day she was born. And I went to the DMV to formally transfer the title of the safe, reliable, top-of-the-line sedan I had already purchased as her graduation gift, putting it squarely and irrevocably into my own name. Her new life, the one she had so publicly chosen, began with a symphony of panicked phone calls less than 24 hours later. This wasn't an act of anger. Anger is a hot, messy emotion. This was an act of accounting. A balancing of the books. She had publicly fired me from the job of being her father, at least in the financial sense she seemed to care about, so I was simply accepting her decision and beginning my retirement. To understand the calm that settled over me in that moment of public humiliation, you need to understand the 15 years that preceded it. I'm a financial planner. My entire world revolves around logic, long-term strategy, and the quiet, compounding growth of smart decisions. I'm not flashy. My suits are well-made but not ostentatious. My car is a model known for safety and reliability, not speed. When my ex-wife, Linda, and I divorced, I handled it like a portfolio adjustment. We analyzed our assets, minimized the emotional fallout for the sake of our then 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, and I made a series of unilateral concessions for one reason: stability for my child. I gave Linda the majority of our liquid assets, but I kept the house. The agreement was simple: she and Chloe could live there, indefinitely, as long as it remained a stable environment. I would pay the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance. All of it. On top of that, I paid my court-mandated child support and an additional, informal family support stipend every month, a generous amount that ensured Linda never had to worry about bills and Chloe never had to go without. For years, it worked. I was the quiet, reliable foundation upon which their lives were built. I was the bedrock. Boring, perhaps. Invisible, most of the time. But always there. I was the safety net, the provider, the real dad who showed up to every parent-teacher conference, who proofread every essay, and who spent 18 years diligently investing in a $529 college fund destined to give her a debt-free start in life. Then came Rick. 3 years ago, Linda met Rick at some self-help seminar. He called himself a lifestyle architect and a mindset guru. He was all flash and dazzle. He wore bright, tailored suits, drove a leased Maserati, and spoke in a constant stream of motivational quotes and prosperity gospel nonsense. He moved into my house with my ex-wife and my daughter. I wasn't thrilled, but Chloe seemed happy, and Linda assured me he was a positive influence. So, I maintained the status quo. I kept paying for the roof over his head. I kept paying the stipend that I'm sure contributed to the payment on his ridiculous car. I tolerated it because it was all for Chloe. But I watched his influence spread like a stain. Chloe, my once grounded, intelligent daughter, started talking about manifesting abundance and vibrating on a higher frequency. She grew dismissive of my scarcity mindset when I advised her to get a summer job. My sensible, 4-door sedan became your boring dadmobile. The trips we used to take to national parks were replaced with requests for weekends in Miami with Rick and her mom, so they could network with other high-energy individuals. I saw my daughter being replaced by a cheap copy of a man who had never built a single thing of lasting value in his entire life. The party was just the culmination of this 3-year erosion. It was the final, public declaration that substance meant nothing and style meant everything. And as she spoke those words, I didn't feel hurt. I felt a strange sense of clarity. The numbers simply didn't add up anymore. My investment in her was yielding negative returns. It was time to rebalance the portfolio. The party wound down in a haze of forced smiles and people avoiding my gaze. Rick was preening, accepting congratulations from clueless guests as if he'd just cured a disease. Linda had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but she was quickly swept up in Rick's orbit of smug self-satisfaction. Chloe, my daughter, didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. She was too busy taking selfies with her friends in the shiny red convertible Rick had parked ostentatiously on the front lawn. I made a quiet exit, giving a polite wave to a few family members who shot me sympathetic looks. I drove home not in a rage, but in a state of profound and icy calm. The emotional circuit breaker in my brain had finally tripped. The part of me that was Dad, the part that forgave and forgot and always gave more, went dormant. The part of me that was a financial planner, the part that assessed risk, cut losses, and made rational decisions based on hard data, took complete control. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk with a laptop and a notepad. I didn't look at old photos or wallow in sentimentality. I looked at spreadsheets. I reviewed account statements, property deeds, and financial agreements. It was a methodical audit of my emotional and financial investment in Chloe and Linda. For every dollar I had spent, every sacrifice I had made, I tried to find a corresponding entry of respect or appreciation on the other side of the ledger. By dawn, the conclusion was inescapable. The account was severely, almost comically, out of balance. My support was not seen as love, it was seen as an entitlement. My stability was not a gift, it was a resource to be exploited. Her speech wasn't a youthful misstep. It was a mission statement. It was a public announcement of her allegiance. She had chosen her new sponsor. It was only fair that I honored her choice by formally resigning from the position. The next morning, which was a Saturday, I began my work. The first call was to my realtor, a shark named Cynthia whom I'd known for years. "Cynthia," I said, my voice even. "It's Mark. I want to list my property on Elm Street. I want it on the market by Monday morning." There was a pause. Your family's house?" she asked, a note of surprise in her voice. "It's my house, Cynthia," I corrected her gently. "It's an asset, and I've decided to liquidate it. I want an aggressive price for a quick sale." No contingencies. She knew better than to argue with me when I used that tone. The second task was online. I logged into the portal for the $529 college savings plan I had opened for Chloe the month she was born. For 18 years, I had deposited money into it every single month, without fail. I had managed the investments carefully, turning my steady contributions into a portfolio worth just over $250,000. Enough for her to attend her dream school, a prestigious private university, without a single cent of debt. With a few clicks, I changed the beneficiary of the account from Chloe to myself. Then I initiated a full withdrawal of the funds. I was fully aware of the tax implications and the 10% penalty on the earnings. It was a price I was more than willing to pay. It was a severance package. The third step required a short drive. I went to my home office safe and took out the file for the car I had bought for her. It was a brand new, silver Honda Accord, the highest trim level, loaded with every safety feature imaginable. It was the epitome of a real dad car, reliable, safe, and practical. The title was in my name, waiting to be signed over to her as my graduation gift. I drove to the DMV, waited in line, and had the title reissued solely in my name. I even bought new license plate frames for it. It was a nice car. I decided it would be my new daily driver. The final piece was a call to my lawyer. "Jim," I said, "I want to draft a formal letter to Linda. The unwritten agreement regarding the family support stipend is now terminated, effective immediately. Her final child support payment was last month. From this point forward, my only financial obligation is the 60-day notice to vacate the property as required by state law. Please have the notice delivered by a process server on Monday." The first panicked call came on Tuesday morning. It was Chloe. Her voice was thin, confused. "Dad? Hey. something weird happened. I got an email from the university bursar's office. It said the check for my fall tuition deposit was declined due to insufficient funds. I took a sip of my coffee. Yes, I said calmly. That's correct. The funds are no longer sufficient because the account they were drawn from no longer exists. There was a long silence on her end. I could hear her breathing, the faint sound of a car horn in the background. What? What do you mean it no longer exists? The college fund? You closed it. The confusion was morphing into disbelief. I didn't close it, Chloe, I clarified, using my most patient, instructional tone. I simply reallocated the assets. You see, that fund was an investment in your future, a future I was underwriting. At your party, you made it very clear that you have a new, preferred underwriter. I'm just respecting your choice. I could almost hear the gears grinding in her head as she struggled to connect her speech to this consequence. But that was my money, she finally stammered, a note of indignation creeping in. No, Chloe, I said, my voice remaining perfectly level. It was never your money. It was my money, designated for your education under my stewardship. You were the beneficiary, not the owner. Ownership and stewardship require a certain level of respect, which you publicly rescinded. I'm sure Rick, with his philosophy of abundance, has a wonderful plan to fund your education. He's a man who taught you to dream big, after all. It's time to see what those big dreams are made of. I heard a choked sob before she hung up. The second call, about an hour later, was from Linda. There was no confusion in her voice, only pure, unfiltered rage. She was screaming before I even finished saying hello. Mark! What is this? What in the hell is this? A man just showed up at the door and served me with eviction papers. Eviction? Are you insane? You're kicking us out of our home. I let her vent, holding the phone slightly away from my ear. When she paused to take a breath, I replied. Hello, Linda. To be precise, I am not evicting you. I am simply choosing not to renew our informal lease agreement. The house is being sold, she shrieked. You can't sell this house. This is my home. This is Chloe's home. We've lived here for 15 years. I can sell it, Linda, because it is not your home, I said, my voice cold and declarative. It is my asset. It is a piece of my financial portfolio that is no longer performing to my expectations. You have 60 days to find a new place to live, as per the law. I suggest you and Rick start looking immediately. The real estate market is quite competitive, Rick, she sputtered. What does Rick have to do with this? This is between you and me. Oh, I think Rick has everything to do with this, I said smoothly. He is your partner. He is the man who has stepped into the role of provider, a role he seems to relish. He gave Chloe a car. I'm sure he can provide a house, too. You two seem to have it all figured out. I'm just getting out of the way to give you the space to build your own foundation, since mine is apparently so inadequate. There was a sputtering, incoherent reply before the line went dead. The foundation of their world, the one they never saw but always stood on, had just been pulled away. And they were beginning the long fall down. The third and final call of the day came that evening. It was Rick. He tried to play it smooth, his voice oozing the practiced charm of a cheap salesman. Mark. Buddy. Hey, listen, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding here. Linda and Chloe are really upset. I think we all just got a little emotional at the party, you know how it is. I cut him off. There is no misunderstanding, Rick, I said, the words sharp and clean. Everything is, for the first time in years, perfectly clear. Let's be direct, shall we? For 3 years, you have been living in my house, eating food likely paid for by my money, all while positioning yourself as the fun, successful father figure and systematically portraying me as the boring, inadequate provider. Now, hold on, Mark, I never said that he started, but I rolled right over him. You didn't have to say it. You just had to show up with your leased sports cars and your empty promises of abundance while I paid the mortgage. You encouraged my daughter to value flash over substance, and at her graduation party, you took a victory lap. You accepted her public praise for a gift, a depreciating asset, I might add, that was a direct insult to my 18 years of support. You smiled and took a bow. So, I am now formally inviting you to take a permanent bow. There was a stunned silence. What? What are you talking about? He finally managed to say. I'm talking about responsibility, Rick, I explained. You wanted the title, the glory, the public acclaim of being the provider. You've got it. It's all yours now. The house, the tuition, the car insurance, the cell phone bills, the day-to-day cost of living for a young adult. I am officially retiring from the role. You've been promoted. Congratulations on your new position. I hope the salary is commensurate with the responsibilities, though I suspect it's not. I hung up the phone before he could reply. The torch had been passed. I suspected it was going to burn him. 2 weeks later, the facade of Rick's success began to crumble spectacularly. The first crack appeared when the fire engine red convertible was repossessed from their driveway in the middle of the night. It turned out Rick hadn't bought it for Chloe at all. He had signed a 3-month, high-interest lease, likely with the down payment money he'd skimmed from Linda's support stipend. When the first full monthly payment came due, he defaulted. Chloe woke up one morning to find her prized possession, the symbol of her father's supposed inadequacy, simply gone. The shame was so palpable you could taste it. Neighbors talked. Her friends, who had been so impressed, now giggled behind her back. The flashy gift had been exposed for what it was, a cheap, temporary illusion. Next, the reality of the housing market hit them like a physical blow. Linda and Rick quickly discovered that with his shaky, unverifiable income as a mindset guru and her long-term unemployment, they couldn't get approved for a rental in any decent neighborhood, let alone qualify for a mortgage. Their applications were repeatedly denied. The panic began to set in as the 60-day deadline loomed, each day a tick of the clock towards homelessness. Chloe, stripped of her car and her university plans, had to get a job. She ended up working the morning shift at a coffee shop, earning minimum wage. The girl who had scoffed at my scarcity mindset was now learning about financial reality one latte at a time. The universe, it seems, has a wonderful, if brutal, way of teaching the lessons you refuse to learn voluntarily. I heard through the grapevine that Rick's online courses weren't selling and that he was being hounded by creditors. The lifestyle architect couldn't even architect a stable life for himself, let alone for my daughter and ex-wife. The inevitable confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening, about a month after the party. They showed up at my front door, unannounced. Chloe, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed. Linda, looking defeated and years older. And Rick, his usual peacock strut replaced with the slumped shoulders of a man who had run out of tricks. I led them into my living room, the same way I'd lead a new client into my office for a financial review. I sat in my armchair while they huddled together on the sofa opposite me. It was Chloe who spoke first, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad. I'm sorry I held up a hand, not unkindly. Before we get into apologies, I want to make sure we are all clear on what happened. This isn't about me being angry or punishing you. This is about cause and effect. Do you understand that, Chloe?" She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "You stood up in front of everyone I love and respect," I continued, my voice calm and measured. "And you made a public declaration of value. You stated that the value of a father is measured in flashy gifts. You compared Rick's leased convertible to my 18 years of silent, consistent support, and you declared him the winner. You told the world, my real dad never gave me a car. As of that moment, I decided to make your statement factually true. I gestured around my living room. This life, this stability you see around you, wasn't manifested. It was built. It was built with discipline, with sacrifice, and with quiet, daily effort. The same effort that built your college fund and paid for the roof over your head. You took a lifetime of that effort and you spat on it for a cheap thrill and a shiny toy." Rick tried to interject, starting with a weak, "Mark, we all make mistakes." I turned my gaze to him, and it was like turning a freezer unit on full blast. "You You are the architect of this. You are a parasite who latched onto my family's stability and sold them a fantasy you couldn't afford. You posed for the pictures but refused to pay the bill. The bill is now due. He visibly shrank back into the couch. I turned back to Chloe. You wanted Rick to be your provider. I have honored that. The house is in escrow, it's sold in a week. The college fund is now the seed money for my own early retirement fund. The reliable, safe car I bought for you is now my daily driver, and I have to say, the gas mileage is excellent. Every one of these consequences is a direct and proportional response to the choice you made and the words you spoke. You didn't just insult me, Chloe. You fundamentally misunderstood the nature of love and support. You thought it was about grand gestures. It's not. It's about showing up. It's about the mortgage payment that's made when you're not looking. It's about the investment account that grows while you sleep. You traded a fortress of real, tangible security for a cardboard cutout of a sports car. And now you have to live with the trade. Linda was openly sobbing now. Chloe just stared at the floor, the full weight of her decision finally crashing down on her. The lesson was complete. In the end, there was no grand, tearful reconciliation. That wasn't the point. I didn't take them back in. I didn't reverse any of my decisions. The house was sold to a lovely young family. Linda and Rick had to move into a cramped, run-down apartment an hour away, the only place that would accept them. Rick's Maserati was long gone, replaced by a beat-up old sedan that probably cost less than one of his fancy suits. Linda had to take a job as a cashier at a grocery store. Chloe deferred her dream university indefinitely. She enrolled in the local community college and continues to work at the coffee shop to pay for her tuition and books. She calls me sometimes. The conversations are stilted, awkward. She apologizes, and I accept her apology, but I don't offer to fix her problems. I've made it clear that our relationship must be rebuilt on a new foundation, one of mutual respect, not financial dependency. I am her father, and I will always love her. I will offer advice. I will be there for emotional support. But the bank of Dad is permanently closed. My support is no longer a silent entitlement, it is something to be earned through respect and maturity. It was a harsh lesson, I admit. But it was a necessary one. She publicly defined my worth as a father by what I would buy her. I simply chose to accept her definition, and in doing so, I taught her the invaluable, painful difference between price and value. She learned that a real gift isn't always shiny and loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet, unseen foundation that you don't even notice until it's gone.